Hi. Apologies, everybody. My computer decided it wouldn't take me to the stage, it'd take me elsewhere. So, thank you for adding to the document. There's some really great stuff that's gone in there. Chance to just have a look at the things that are going in there, because you'll recognize that the challenges are not always just you on your own, and actually across colleges we're seeing lots of different things and common themes in terms of challenges. There's some really great ones actually around communication skills and social skills. We are seeing that nationally. People are commenting on social interaction and students maybe not being able to regulate their interactions with each other. There is some discussion about challenging behaviour, which is kind of linked to social behaviour and that expectation. Students are struggling to get into routines. They're struggling to be able to sort of adhere to professional behaviours or rules and expectations of them. And then a couple of others that are quite important and quite big are related to low self-esteem or low aspiration, lack of motivation, and also a low engagement with workload, them finding it quite hard to step up in terms of workload. So hopefully, and there is some great discussion about why that might be happening and also some of the solutions. And hopefully you'll see that some of the things that we're going to consider will hopefully address some of these. As you can gather from that list of just the few that I've picked out, these are not easy things to address, but they are some of the big picture things that we need to really think about before we can get students engaged in the achievement of their qualifications. So, but more importantly than that, it's about that whole person development. And now more than ever, we need to really think about whole person development before we can move them into unlocking their potential in terms of academic achievement. So I'm going to share a presentation with you again, and we're going to, what I want you to think about is applying some of the things that you learned with Jeff about graphic organisers, and possibly as I present some things to you, we're going to look at five things, and I'm going to ask you to create yourself a graphic organizer of some sort as we go through. So if you're anything like me, I love a coloured pen and lots of different words and images on a piece of paper. So map out some of those things, and then what we're going to do is what I want you to do is, as I go through the five things, I want you to consider what that means for you and how you might be able to do that. And then what we'll do, we'll have a quick break so you can kind of digest some of that, and then we're going to go into table discussions again after the break to think about real examples, and you might choose one or two that really stand out to you in terms of themes, but you'll be able to work with others to have that discussion about how you might be able to work those up. I'm going to encourage you to go in the tables and put your cameras on and have a really good chat with people from other colleges, especially to share experiences of these things and the things you've been trying to do. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just make this full screen. Okay, so what I did want to talk to you about is that's not going to work for me. What I did want to talk to you about is these five things. So last year, as we were coming out of the lockdowns, there was a lot of talk about recovery and recovery curriculum. So the recovery curriculum is actually a piece of work by a guy called Barry Carpenter, and it was focused quite heavily on primary recovery, so primary children and their development needs out of COVID lockdowns. What I did, I really liked the 5 pillars, as he calls them. I really thought about some of the things that were coming out of the discussions from across the country about quality, about students, and really thought about what that means to FE and apprenticeships. So I'm going to talk to you about these 5 things. And as I said, I'm going to encourage you to map out, try to map out a graphic organizer to take a few notes, and you will get the slides afterwards. So don't worry about getting everything down, but get down some key points for you to go into the group discussions with. So he talked about 5 pillars, as he calls them. I'm going to talk to you about these 5 things and why these 5 things are really important in terms of, or really useful to consider some of the big challenges that we are currently facing. So relationships and community are very similar, but have different things to consider. Metacognition, which is really powerful. Transparent curriculum and how that means and what we can do around employer engagement in particular. And then sense of self. So we're going to start with relationships. It's a really big one in terms of behaviours that we're currently seeing with students. There was a big period of time where students didn't have much social interaction other than online, or other than through gaming platforms or text messages or social media. And so the way that they communicate is very different now, or people are noticing that they communicate very differently or can struggle to communicate, full stop. So I thought it'd be really interesting just to unpick some of the theory and some of the research that's related to relationships, and there's just a few key bullet points here. So what's really important to remember is that engagement in anything increases when people feel a sense of being heard, valued, or seen and respected. So if students don't feel those things, or you might recognize that if you don't feel seen or heard or valued, your engagement is less than if you do feel seen, heard, or valued. So we need to create spaces in classrooms where students feel really seen and really heard and valued as part of that classroom.
Hi everybody. Stefanie seems to be having some Wi-Fi issues, so we'll get back to you shortly. I will just go and help troubleshoot, but we will be back with you soon. Thank you for your patience.
Hi everybody. Is that any better? Can you hear and see me now? Let me know. Hi Louise.
Hi, yeah, we can hear you and we can see you again, Stefanie.
Perfect, thank you. I'm not quite sure what happened. Thanks everyone, great. So I was talking about relationships and the need to communicate and what is important is the use of language. So what is really a big sort of thing to think about is how we really use collaborative learning to how we can use collaborative learning frequently and often in our lessons. So I'm going to try and share the screen again. I'm not sure if that's throwing us off a little bit, but we'll see. So it's really important. If any of you are familiar with evidence-based teaching and learning strategies, you might be aware of the Education Endowment Foundation. So again, if you Google Education Endowment Foundation and their teaching and learning toolkit, they have links to things that have some evidence in terms of impact on learners. There's three that are really key. One of them is collaborative learning, and how we build our lessons to be very collaborative and get students to work together is absolutely key to get them to build relationships. So what I would say is really think about how you can always include group discussions, how you can build in problem solving, how you can build in creativity in terms of coming up with new ways of doing things, how you can build in opportunities, whether that be in thinking pairs or whether it be in smaller groups of 3s and 4s for your students to work together. I'm not going to give you all the answers yet as such, because there's lots of different options, but when you go into your groups, you'll be able to think about things together. What I really want you to think about is how do you build a sense of connection? How do you provide opportunities for students to really get to know each other and get to know what each other think about topics or things that they're learning? So I want you to think about how do you create opportunities where students can really get to know each other and work together well. Okay, so the second pillar is community, which is very similar to building relationships, and building community helps and contributes to building relationships. But if we rewind it a little bit and think about the evidence-based stuff that goes with this, ultimately we are social beings. Some people are less social than others, but we are social beings. So being part of a community really helps us to develop a sense of belonging. And if you take away anything, the word belonging is really powerful. So I want you to think about, how do you build a sense of belonging? There is often groups of teams, different curriculum areas that do this really well. Often sport and public services can do this really, really well. And also media and art tend to do this really well. So I want you to have a think about, how can you build more of a sense of community? How can you build more of a sense of belonging? Because it's that helps to build community and give students a sense of safe space as well in the classroom. Community engagement also can relate to the community around the college and beyond the college. So building a sense of community beyond your classroom, because classroom community is one thing, but how do you build that sense of community across the college, but also beyond the college, can be really, really powerful. So community building, being involved in initiatives in your community outside of the college, can also give students a sense of purpose and a sense of playing a part in something bigger than themselves. So when you talk about all these things, I want you to think about how you might be able to do that with your students. And again, building a collaborative approach to this can involve students in the design of the community projects. So like I said, either projects within the classroom or projects around the college or projects beyond the college. Just before I do go on to transparent curriculum, community often is about contributing to something bigger than yourself. So if you think about how we sometimes pitch qualifications, that can be quite a narrow lens to think about. So I want you to think about how you can encourage your students to think about how they can contribute to things bigger than themselves. So is there charities, is there projects locally, is there things going on in the college that they can build and create? So student union, student networking, student peer mentors or coaches. Is there ways that you can create groups of students, clubs or interest groups that would bring about a sense of community? Transparent curriculum then is all about the why of why we teach what we teach. And I'm going to come back to this point in a little while. But the rationale is absolutely essential. So where people mentioned before, one of the key challenges is around motivations and aspirations. This is a biggie in terms of motivation and aspirations. Rationale of why we do something is the reason that either students want to join in or they don't want to join in. And too often, I see people talk about the why being related to the achievement qualification. And we've got to think more ambitiously than that. We've got to think more holistically than that. Because if someone said to me, we've got to do this because it's on an assignment, I'm switched off. But if someone said to me, well, this is a skill that is going to be really useful for your career progression because this is going on in industry and this is going to be really important for future development of the industry. And these are the sorts of opportunities that can come about if you have these skills, I'm going to be more engaged. So I want you to think about the why. Even if you write in big letters why, and you answer the why at every opportunity that you can with students, you're going to get better motivation and better engagement. So what you need to think about is, and what you need to remember is, students that have come out of school, they have been absolutely hammered with the why being because they need to get a good GCSE result. And they need to get a good GCSE result to get a good job. You need to get a good job to then earn enough money to be happy. Well, we all know that is not necessarily true. So actually, we need to motivate students to be really into that industry or be intrigued about that industry and what their part is to play in that industry. So there's lots to think about how we can switch students onto their strengths, how we can identify the skills that they do have, what are their character strengths that means that they will be good if they went into that industry, and really switching students on to what can they contribute to the future of that industry. So moving the rationale away from because you need to do this because you'll get a qualification. So purpose, rationale, and intention, if that is clear, people are more motivated. Also, transparent curriculum is also about getting students to be involved in the design or be able to say what they are interested in and what they would like to learn more about. So think about, are there opportunities where you can ask students to contribute to the guest speakers that you're going to get in this year? Are there certain companies, are there certain people that they want to hear from as part of their learning? Get them to collaboratively input into what do they want to learn about here, who do they want to be interesting to get on, whether it be online or in person into college, because now with technology we can zoom people in from around the world if we wanted to. So getting students to input into that will also develop their sense of agency about their learning, getting them to input into the way or some of the assessment focus potentially, or the way that they're assessed, or having employers involved in assessment can also motivate students. And then transparent curriculum is also about what is the wider knowledge, skills and behaviours that you're trying to develop with your students. And what I would say is that if you haven't already seen some of the skills for the future from the World Economic Forum. There is, again, I'll send all the links afterwards, but there's a page, an article about skills for 2030, and it's all about what are the top 20 skills that will be useful in 2030, and there's a list. So innovation and creativity is one of those skills. So aligning the curriculum, aligning the knowledge, skills and behaviours that we're trying to develop with our students to that bigger picture around social skills, around critical thinking, for example, will help us to think about how we design our lessons so that they are building on this wider skill development for students, so that we're thinking about personal growth, development, and students fulfilling their potential. And I think I mentioned before, one of the things that I have been thinking about is how do we support students to be leaders of the future? How do we purvey that message to students? And a little bit later, after the break, I'm going to talk to you about some of the positive psychology that can really influence the messages that we give in the classroom. Okay, so we're going to have a break because there's lots of things in there to think about. There's 2 more pillars that I'm going to quickly run through after the break. And then you're going to go into groups to talk about how you might either already be doing some of those things, or that you can develop some of those things going forward. So let's say 10 minutes. So let's say 11:15. And let's make sure that we get 5 minutes outside, or just go move around and reset your energy. Try not to stay on. And we'll come back at